The United States has taken a new action against a second ship linked to Iran, and they did so at the most sensitive moment possible, landing squarely on the eve of a ceasefire and placing the Iranian regime under unbearable pressure. On the morning of April 21, 2026, the target of this operation was the tanker Tiffany, which was intercepted in international waters within the Indian Ocean. In practice, this interception was a full military maritime interdiction operation executed against a vessel that was already associated with the heavily sanctioned Iranian oil circuit. Circulating images have added even more political weight to the episode, as military helicopters are seen descending by rope onto the deck to actively take control of the vessel. This dramatic action is part of a much broader global hunt for ships linked to Iran, heavily focused on showing strength, speed, and absolute American dominance at sea. The central point here is remarkably simple. It was not a vague diplomatic warning. It was a concrete military action backed with video evidence, an identified ship, and a direct message. At the very center of this escalating conflict are the Trump administration, the Pentagon, and the American naval structure, standing on one side opposing the Iranian regime, its sanctioned oil network, and the hardline political sectors resisting any concessions on the other. It is crucial to note that the Tiffany didn't simply appear out of nowhere. The ship had already been officially sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury on July 30, 2025, and was officially listed in relation to the illicit transport of Iranian oil. This history firmly shows that the target had been marked for months. Now, with the broader war in limbo and the fragile truce hanging by a thread, Washington decisively decided to act. The specific location of the operation matters significantly. The Tiffany was located somewhere between Sri Lanka and Indonesia, headed toward the Singapore region, which placed it very far from the Iranian coast. This geographical detail completely changes the scale of the operation. The U.S. intentionally did not want to project the idea that they can only pressure Iran near Hormuz. The resounding message was that the Iranian maritime network can be struck far beyond the Gulf, even in major international commercial routes that are highly sensitive to global energy. To understand the stakes, we must look at how this pressure was built. Before the Tiffany, the U.S. had already seized the Iranian-flagged freighter Tuska near Chabahar after hours of completely ignored warnings. In that first case, the action was notably even harsher. The destroyer USS Spruance ordered the engine room evacuated and fired live 5-inch cannon rounds directly at the engine compartment to physically stop the ship, an action immediately followed by Marines boarding the vessel. According to sources heard by Reuters, the Tuska likely carried dual-use items, materials possessing both civil and military applications. The interpretation currently gaining strength is that Washington has officially decided to tighten the screws on two of the Iranian regime's primary veins simultaneously, its supply and its money. Highlighting this financial pressure, the Tiffany, according to the Associated Press, had already been sanctioned for its direct involvement in moving Iranian crude to Asia. In other words, the U.S. is not just monitoring the situation, it is actively trying to suffocate the system that is currently keeping Tehran breathing amidst the crisis. Why is this happening exactly now? Because the ticking truce clock has effectively become a political weapon. Reuters has reported that there is still talk of a potential new round of negotiations in Islamabad, but everything remains highly uncertain. Adding to the diplomatic tension, Vice President J.D. Vance had not yet left the United States as of April 20th, and Iran itself has definitively not given firm confirmation of its attendance. Meanwhile, Trump is actively accusing Tehran of violating the ceasefire and continues to insist on a central, non-negotiable demand, an absolute end to enrichment and the immediate surrender of the enriched uranium stockpile. The Iranian regime, in turn, is attempting to buy time, actively demand sanctions relief, and carefully avoid entering the negotiating table already defeated. In this tense scenario, every stopped ship becomes a powerful instrument of pressure. Internally within Iran, this immense external pressure actively fuels the hardliners. The more the siege advances at sea, the harder it becomes for the regime to sell the controversial idea of holding talks with Washington to its own radical core. The critical background to all this remains the Strait of Hormuz, and the situation unfolding there is still exceptionally grave. Reuters reported this Tuesday that maritime traffic remains largely locked down, with only 3 vessels passing through in 24 hours, a volume far below the normal flow of about 140 per day. This means the ongoing conflict continues to directly affect a route that is vital for global oil and gas. Another important point is that the U.S. had already been hardening its aggressive policy on Iranian oil in the previous days. Reuters reported on April 15th that Washington explicitly warned potential buyers of Iranian oil that they could also be violently targeted by sanctions. This detail helps to fully understand the complete logic of the operation. First, forcefully threaten the buyers, then directly board the transporters. In the middle of it all, heavily lock the route. It is a masterful design of economic, military, and psychological pressure all applied at once. The final reading of this escalating conflict is harsh. The United States has firmly decided to turn the sea into a vast field of asphyxiation against the Iranian regime. The violent interception of the Tuskha showed that Washington is entirely willing to actively escalate in order to stop suspicious cargo. Now, the Tafani has showed that Iranian oil has also become a direct target. The dramatic videos of the attack, or rather, the military boarding utilizing helicopters and specialized commandos, serve to completely reinforce exactly that. This is not just a distant diplomatic crisis, it is a very public demonstration of force made at the precise moment when Iranian hardliners must decide between swallowing the overwhelming pressure or risking the war reigniting with the regime far more surrounded, more exposed, and with significantly less room for maneuver than before.